Greetings and welcome. So this is going to be part two of this Bible study about how money and talent without godliness is great loss. So I'm on my second point now, is that sometimes these gains, wealth that you try to obtain, it's foolish or it's hurtful. Like it actually hurts you. Like you think you're doing something good, but it's actually hurting you. So yeah, I think like actually honestly I think I've already brought up some of these points in the previous video, like with the Mountain Dew example about how sin just hurts you. You start sinning and you think it's going to be fun, and it's not. It's just temporary. It's just temporary fun. Then eventually it's not fun anymore. And lots of people have been tricked, deceived into thinking that they'll be happy, but they're not happy. Um, so Yeah, I mean, so anyway, like it doesn't matter, like, and you think like, oh, well, this extreme sin and wickedness, that's for people that made like they're stupid, it's for stupid people. Like stupid people do drugs and alcohol and all of that stuff, right? Stupid people, people with bad backgrounds, but the truth is, anybody can become an alcoholic or a druggie or a smoker or whatever. Can fall into any kind of sin. It doesn't matter. It doesn't your upbringing doesn't matter. In fact, I would almost argue that having a good upbringing, like a successful upbringing, could potentially be even worse sometimes. Because if you're like, I mean, if you look at celebrities, really rich people, millionaires, billionaires, they often are some of the worst people, because there's certain crimes and sins that they fall into that normal people couldn't do it, because the average person, they're busy working, supporting their family, and just they have to maintain a certain level of discipline in their lives, because if they don't, they're just going to fall. Like everything's just going to go down the drain. Everything's going to go downhill from there, because they have to keep up that discipline for the sake of themselves and for others. So they can't afford to fall into all these wicked sins. But a rich person who's wealthy, especially spoiled children, this is generally, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the parents that earn the wealth. The people that earn the wealth, that worked hard for their wealth, they generally take it seriously. But the children who grow up in the families, have wealthy parents, they don't always treat that wealth appropriately. They didn't earn that wealth. They're just they're being blessed by it. They're being blessed by the hard work of their parents. So these children are sometimes susceptible to fall into the worst sins, because they can get away with it, you know, um, because they have the money and the wealth. They don't have to work hard. Everything's just handed to them. So sometimes they end up being really spoiled. They have a hard time succeeding in life because they don't know what it's like to actually work hard. They've never had to work hard. And sometimes, so this can happen for people that are, born into having lots of wealth. It's also true for people that are like good at school, like everything's easy in school. You get good grades without trying, and then you don't have to work very hard. So then later in life, it becomes hard when you actually have to work hard. You've never earned you never worked up a discipline or a work ethic. And this, this is the common phenomenon. So I mean, this is true for the wealth perspective, but also for like an IQ perspective. But anything that having access to a lot of resources and talent at a young age could potentially be very detrimental, because if you don't build up discipline and a work ethic, um, and then you just and then so eventually, so you have a good start, but then you just go downhill after a certain amount of time. And so anyway, this is what happens. And like I went to high school with a lot of really smart people, and you would think that these would be super disciplined and disciplined people, and sometimes they were, but they fell into the same. Just because I went to a school for smart people, smart kids, um, they still fell into the same sins that people fell into at normal high schools. We had plenty of people doing bad stuff, sometimes even worse. Like I'm actually surprised in my school we kind of had a high percentage of like Christians, but we also had a high percentage of like people going to say. I think we had a lot of homosexuals too at my school. Like I think higher than normal, and we ended up with all sorts of weird characters at my school. Yeah, because this was a school that kind of attracted kind of like, I don't know. We attracted some weirdos at my high school. I'll just put it that way. And yeah, so they can fall into the same sins. The IQ didn't matter. We had, like I said, I had plenty of very intelligent classmates from an academic perspective. But those same people, they could still drink and do drugs and all sorts of stuff. So it didn't, they weren't above that. We're still human, flesh is flesh. And they're going to do the same things. Um, so just having idleness and talent could be very detrimental at a young age. So just having all this gain could be foolish and hurtful. That was my point. I was actually almost thinking I was going off topic there, but yeah, like having all of these resources at a young age, all this talent and all of that, and all this wealth could be detrimental because you don't obtain the discipline to treat it appropriately. And it could distract you. It could distract you from the Lord, from doing things you should be doing. Um, so yeah, it actually led to more wickedness, like I said, and having all of the sin, it actually leads to higher extremes. Like you get these, like this has actually been mentioned in people with bipolar disorder, where you have these high extremes. You have this like super happy, excited, day, and then all this super depressed day, and it just goes back and forth like this. So a lot of these people, they're not like mentally balanced. They just oscillate so much between super happy, super depressed, super happy, super depressed. It just goes back and forth like that. Whereas you want godliness with contentment where you're just like level, I mean, just kind of goes like this, just goes a little up, a little down. You have a kind of a good day, maybe a bad day sometimes, but when you're just going up and down like this, um, you're unstable, very, very unstable. Um, so yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what happens. You get these extremes because when you're a rich, wealthy person, smart, and then everything's easy, everything's handed to you, and then you run into difficulties in life, you don't know how to handle those difficulties. You just get instantly depressed. When someone's wealthy and they lose their wealth, they get super depressed. Whereas someone that starts off at the bottom and works their way up, they're used to adversity. They're used to difficulties in life. They learn to handle difficulties in life at a young age. And that's what you want to like that's important. If you need to learn how to handle adversity and difficulty early in life. Because if you don't, then you get older and you're just spoiled and you're not going to know like what to do. You're not going to know how to handle having trouble, having difficulties. And that's why people get depressed. That's why you have these like I said, celebrities, rich people, smart people, they often are susceptible to extremely high levels of depression because they um, they don't know how to handle the trouble. And yeah, so that's just what happens to them. So being poor is not good. Nobody wants to be poor, but there are plenty of examples of people with, that are in poverty, but they have enough to live on. They have food, raiment. God promised you that He would only, He promised you He'd give you your needs, not your wants, right? He promised you your needs, and some people are happy with that. They're happy with just the bare basics that they obtained. Um, so yeah, I mean, and I mean, all of this is very important stuff. This is very important for parents to understand how to properly raise their children, because we have an entire generation of spoiled children that have been raised, maybe even two generations at this point, and parents that had no clue how to properly raise their child, and the fruits of that are now visible. They're very visible. Also allowing the public school to raise their kid for them. So that the children don't have the beliefs of the parents. They have the beliefs of the public school system, which is just one giant propaganda machine. That's why they all think the same. That's why if you look at the generation, this generation, the previous generation, everybody like almost everybody has the same beliefs. There's no critical thinking. Everybody's just one giant brain, and that brain was given to them by the public school system because you're thinking exactly the way you've been taught, and there's very little actual critical thinking going on. Um, it's a huge problem, and society allowed this to happen. The parents allowed this to happen by not asking like, what are you being taught in school? They just like, yeah, we'll just send them off, and the results are now visible. So anyway, that was my second point, is that gain like godly, talent and wealth can be detrimental if you don't use it correctly. If you have wealth, it's a huge temptation. There's a huge temptation to use it incorrectly. If you have intelligence and high IQ, there's a temptation to not use that correctly. You want to use your talents and your resources that God gave you for God's glory. And we do need smart, intelligent, wealthy people to serve the Lord. Unfortunately, we don't have very many. They usually go off doing whatever their own, want to do, their own selfish thing. But we need those people. You need those kinds of people in the body of Christ to serve the Lord and to do things for the glory of God. Because certain things can't get done without money. You need money. That's a fact. You need money. And when there are wealthy people in the body of Christ, that's great. That's someone that can use their resources. They can do something that other people can't. They can help out. So anyway, that's my second point that I finished. So my first point was that gains are temporary. Everything's going to burn. My second point that I just finished is that gains are foolish and hurtful. That they can be potentially foolish and hurtful. My third point is that gains can cause a loss of faith. So in the Bible, let's see. Actually, let me read those verses. So anyway, we're still in 1 Timothy chapter 6 verses 5 through 10. So let me finish off this point by reading verse 9. 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 9. 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 9. But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. So that was basically just summarizing what I just said for the last 13 minutes. So let's move on to the next one, verse 10. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 5 through 10. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Okay, so this is, bringing up some of the previous points, but here it says, very important verse, for the love of money is the root of all evil. This is commonly misquoted. A lot of people don't quote this verse correctly. I believe a lot of the newer Bible versions do not properly translate this verse either. It's bad. It's very important. The word of God, every word is important. There's a purpose for every single word. So here it says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. So it doesn't say money is the root of all evil. Money is not the root of all evil. Money by itself is not evil. It's the love of money. So every word's important. Just keep that in mind. It's not just money. No, the love of money is the root of all evil. And all does literally mean all. So which is actually, I just brought this up about a minute or two ago. It's okay to be wealthy. If you are, great, serve the Lord with it. But if you love money, then that's bad. When you love the money, that's when you're going to make bad decisions. That's when you're going to make it an idol. If you make money an idol above God, that's when it becomes a sin. You need to, use your resources, use your wealth, use your intelligence, whatever God gave you, your talents, use it for the Lord. When you use it for yourself and selfish motives, that's when you have a problem. That's when you've made it an idol. That's when you're spoiled. So, and let's see, I don't have the verse written down here, but forget where it says this, but it says, you must decrease so God can increase. So you have to decrease and humble yourself. And only then can God increase and get the glory. If you magnify yourself, if you glorify yourself with your abilities and talents, then God's not the one getting the glory. And you're not going to get rewarded for that because you've gotten your reward. Your reward on earth. You've been magnified and glorified by people. You want the praise of people? Fine, you can get it. And you've earned your reward on earth. But you will not earn a reward in heaven for that kind of an attitude. So, so you want to delay gratification. You want to glorify the Lord. Glorify the Lord. You'll get your reward in heaven. You might not get it here, but you will get it one day. So you must decrease so that God can increase. If you increase yourself, then God decreases. So that's just how it works. So yeah, like the world is just going to choke away your fruitfulness if you just focus on yourself all this time. Here it says, yeah, in verse 10 it says, they have erred from the faith. So if you focus on wealth, you're just going to err from the faith. You're just going to leave church eventually. If you're trying to work 60, 80-hour weeks or whatever and just make money more important than anything and make it an idol, and you stop going to church, it's gonna have its effects. Not immediately, but you will feel the effects of it, and you will pierce yourself through with many sorrows. Guaranteed, absolutely. So at the time it sounds logical, like, hey, yeah, I need to work on Sunday, I can't go to church, I don't have time to read the Bible. A lot of things in the Christian life, they from a non-Christian or atheist perspective, they seem to detract from success in life. Like why would you go to church on Sunday? Why would you read the Bible? There's no gain in that. You're not getting money for that. Yeah, not everything has to be about money. Not everything has to be about money. If you make everything about money, then yeah, you'll get the money. You'll become wealthy, but you're not guaranteed to be happy. You're not. At the time, you think it's a great idea, but there's no guarantee of that. There's no guarantee of a guarantee of happiness. So not everything has to be about money. And the Jews were criticized for that in the Bible. Back then, everybody worked 7-day weeks, and the Jews, they would take the Sabbath off. They would just take a 1-day weekend. In America, the Western world, and I think most countries, you take off, you get 2 days off. The weekend, you get 2 days. But back then, the Jews took 1 day off, the Sabbath, and that was already a big deal. All the other countries were thinking, like, all the other people around them were thinking, like, you guys are crazy. You're lazy. Why are you taking a day off? It's and there's a need for that. There is a need to take a day off, or more. To serve the Lord. Not everything. If you make money your goal in life, it's going to become sad. It's going to become sad. Just working 60, 80-hour weeks. Like if you're just working all the time to earn wealth, then first of all, when are you going to have time to enjoy it? And I think some people are actually starting to realize that there's this minimalist movement going on now for years, because people are starting to realize that it's not making them happy to work all the time, that it's better to work smarter and not harder. And so there's this movement going on, among entrepreneurs and all of that, like just understanding that it's not always about the money. If you just work all the time, when are you gonna have time to enjoy it? And anyway, just keep that in mind. Just so if you make money an idol, it will not make you happy. And yeah, no, anyway, I don't know if this example has anything to do with it, but I have it written down in my notes here, so I might as well mention it. I guess at the time that I wrote this, it seemed like it had something to do with the topic, but so basically what I'm going to say here is that even if you have a good start, like you have a good start, it's not guaranteed. You need to have upkeep. You need to have discipline, because if you don't have discipline, you can fall into all sorts of sins. I've mentioned this in several videos already, but you can fall into any kind of sin even if you are a great Christian. So the example I was going to read here, the illustration, was from my high school. Um, I had a music instructor who, um, I mean, I don't know. He was a kind of a funny guy, make jokes all the time. And um, I remember in his office one time, he had like a diploma from like a Christian school. And I had no idea he was a Christian. He didn't really, I don't know, the way he acted, he didn't really seem like a Christian, but he had a diploma from a Christian school, and it seemed like he was a pretty successful guy in his younger years, pretty athletic. I think he did like football, sports. So yeah, all these pictures, he was all strong, and currently he was extremely overweight. So life happened. Like things did not end up very good for him in life, and he ended up being obese. Obviously his pictures from high school, he looked like it's super fit. Currently, when I saw him, he was extremely obese. So anyway, so obviously things didn't go quite well for him in life at that point, and he seemed like pretty interesting guy, but I don't know, the way he acted, he didn't really seem like Christian the way he acted in a diploma. So anyway, well, what am I getting at? Um, So, long story short, he was a sex offender. And he had, relationships with several girls at the school. I didn't know it at the time. I was already like way past, like I already graduated at that point. It was a big deal. It was in the newspapers, everything. So it's just kind of sad, like someone that, went to a Christian school. I don't know. Potentially, I guess he probably was saved. I don't know. I mean, going to a Christian school or Christian college doesn't necessarily mean you're saved, but um, who knows? He probably had a good start. Maybe he was on the right track in life earlier, and then something went wrong. Something went wrong with his life, and everything just got worse and worse. And he didn't end up. You don't just become a sex offender over the course of one day. Something happens in your heart, and you just slip away over time, and you ended up in that condition over time. It doesn't just happen instantly like that. And especially if you're a Christian, it just doesn't happen like that. So it's kind of sad, but like this can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian. You could end up a sex offender. There are Christians that have ended up becoming sex offenders. You're not immune from that. So anyway, that's just one example that I've seen. And so this is someone that was probably a Christian and ended up like that. And when I met him, they didn't seem like a Christian at all, because he'd make jokes that didn't really sound really, that weren't very, very appropriate at times. And there's usually signs. People say about sex offenders, usually signs. They'll usually make like a lot of inappropriate jokes, and those are just like hints. It's very common. And so yeah, I would never know if he didn't have that diploma in his office with the diploma from a Christian college. I'd never know, and that's what Christians end up with. That they end up in that kind of a condition where no one even knows they're Christians, because the way they act is not any different than the people of the world, and any Christian can end up like that. So you are going to um, I don't know. So anybody can end up like that. So whatever gain and wealth. So if you focus on yourself and your wealth and your talents and just try to do everything on your own, um, and just try to your own accomplishments turn them into an idol, you can end up like that. Anybody can end up like that if you're not careful, if you're not disciplined, if you don't give glory to the Lord. He will give you over to a reprobate mind. God will do that. He'll say, "Oh, you don't want to listen to me? You want to sin? Okay, go ahead. You can do whatever you want." And you can end up in any kind of condition. Lot ended up in a mess just because he was focusing on the physical. His family ended up in a mess. Completely, went downhill. So he was completely out of place. Lot was literally living in a place of wickedness, and it bothered him, but he just caved in. And anyway, so yeah, no, that was sort of on topic. So anyway, look, my last point here is to get. So so far everything's been negative. It's about like how if you focus on yourself and wealth and your own intelligence, it's just not going to work. My last point is that great gain is godliness with contentment. So verse 6, that's the key verse here, is that, let me read that again. So 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6, but godliness with contentment is great gain. And let me read verse 8, and having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. So that's my last point, is that verse from verses 6 and 8, is that, let me read that again. But godliness with contentment is great gain. That's what you want. So don't focus on wealth. Do not make wealth the idol. Focus on godliness. Focus on doing correct things, living righteously. Focus on godliness. Do the right thing. Godliness with contentment. So be godly, be content, and then everything else will follow. That's where the joy comes from. You focus on being godly. Godliness and contentment is great gain. It says great gain, not little gain. Well, actually, yeah, great gain. So godliness with contentment is great gain, not little bit. No, great, like lots, like huge, huge gain. So that's what you want to be focusing on. Is that's where the eternal joy comes from. And the effects of it aren't always visible. They're not always immediate, but they are eternal. You are storing up treasure for heaven. So this is stuff that's going to last. An investment into the future, not some temporary speculative investment. Now, those are the kind of investments people make in life. They just quick, fun, joy things. That's what people invest in. No, you want to make this super important long-term investment into eternity that just goes up forever. Yeah, anyway, that's it. Basically, that's my main point. I think I've said everything at this point. Well, I can also say that, like, it's not always easy being content. It does say godliness with contentment, and godliness, it's hard to be godly and it's hard to be content. Those are two things that don't necessarily come easy. So you do want God, you want to ask God for help in that, because it's not going to naturally, you're not naturally going to be godly or righteous. And you're not naturally going to be content with what the life God's given you. So for some people, it's very hard to be content because the conditions they've been born under are extremely difficult. They're conditions that I have a very hard time finding to be easy to live with, especially if you're born with physical disabilities or mental disabilities, or if you have a child that has physical or mental disabilities. These are common. Like I see this sometimes, and I just wonder, how are you content? How can you be content in such a situation? But the truth is, you can be content under any circumstance. It's just it's just very hard, very hard. But God can help you through all of that. So you want to focus on godliness? You need help with that? God is going to help you become godly, and also to be content. And then once you have that peace, the peace from God that passeth all understanding, that's what you want, the peace from God that passes all understanding. Then you can make some progress. Then you can make the right decisions, and you can be free from the trappings of the real world, of these thoughts that just never leave your mind, of this worry always about money and wealth and stuff, and just accumulation of all of these things, and just constant stress over it. And gain peace. That's what you want to start with, is peace from God that passes all understanding. And you can make the correct decisions. Because God will supply all your needs. So that's that. So yeah, I think I'm going to end it there. I think that was enough for this video. So my next topic, I'm going to have a Bible study called Some Students I Have Known. So that's going to be my next video. It's a sermon I made several years ago, but I think it was a pretty interesting one. So yeah, I'm going to continue. Like I said, I have plenty here in this notebook. I think I can go on for quite a while. So anyway, stay tuned. I'm gonna have plenty more videos. Hopefully this channel keeps growing. Lord willing. So yeah, see you next time.